All right, Union Minister Amit Shah delivered a strong statement in the Lok Sabha a day before the centre's March 31st deadline for the eradication of Maoism, asserting that violent Maoism has now been eliminated from the nation. And so, the focus now shifts to what a Maoist-free India truly means on the ground. Nearly 8 to 10 crore people live across districts once affected by left-wing extremism, regions rich in minerals, forests and human potential, but held back for decades by violence and underdevelopment. The government's plan is clear: security followed by development, roads, mobile connectivity, banking access, schools and healthcare reaching the last mile. The idea is simple: replace violence with governance. Peace in these regions is not just about ending conflict, it unlocks massive economic potential, from mining and infrastructure to local entrepreneurship, bringing these districts into India's growth story. Ending this internal security challenge also means a stronger India, freeing up resources, boosting investor confidence and stabilizing some of the country's most strategic regions. What was once seen as one of India's biggest internal threats is now being framed as its next big opportunity. Maoist-free India is not just a security milestone, it could well become a turning point for inclusive growth. And if this transition holds, the message is clear: India has not just resolved a conflict, it has opened the door to an even bigger future. We'll talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the platform at this point in time is Major General Dhruv Katoch, defense expert. Dr. Sharad Kohli, senior economist, joins us on the program. Nirmal Kaur, former DGP Jharkhand, is also joining us on the show. General Katoch, I'll begin with you. Well, I remember my college days and growing up, Naxalism, Maoism was a problem. Innocent children were killed. There were corridors which were labeled as red corridors, which basically became no man's land. You could not venture. If you did, it was at your own peril. And of course, we remember those 75 personnel losing their life to a Maoist attack a few years ago as well. In your opinion, a task was considered extremely daunting, has now been achieved. What kind of planning and strategic thinking would you appreciate the government with in ending this menace?
Thank you so much, Vineet. Starting point I think was really political will. It doesn't matter what we do in this country, without the politics, nothing works. You require some sort of central authority which says we will do it. And then this political will is not at the center, it permeated to the states. And that is the point: once you had the center-state fusion and interstate coordination, then that, in my view, I think that was the starting point. All this time, because it suffered from a great deal of politics, where for whatever reason and for whatever vote banks were thought of in those areas, quite a few people who controlled the Naxal groups were also controlling vote banks. And that became a challenge. There was, I remember, I think it was in 2001 or 2002, the governor of the state had given a talk which I attended. And that time he said, he as the governor cannot go to many areas, and even the deputy commissioner cannot enter those areas with the police force. That was what the red corridor was. And we were talking about 200 districts or so affected, which is really a very big chunk of India. So I think once the political will started, this coordination started, and then we had a particular security force structure moving systematically. Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked really. So you had, you weren't very ambitious. You went in a few kilometers, you stopped, you put the road there, you kept the security there, and once that area became okay, you went another 10 kilometers. And I think slowly and steadily, when this march went into the jungles, then what happened is that the administration started being affected in those areas. And that is where governance started. And once governance comes into any area, once political penetration comes in, then the people have a voice. Because that local MLA or that local, whoever the legislator chappie there, he is the representative of the people. And now they have a voice. Otherwise, the only voice was the Maoist. And the Maoist had a very simple way of dictating terms. You either obey them or they'll shoot you. There was justice delivered in a very unjust manner. And that was the way life was. It was a very, very bad situation. The thing has changed now. And I think because it has changed on that economy, I just have to give one word. when you're looking at the entire the red corridor portion, it was bringing down India's GDP. The effort involved in simply keeping the peace was humongous, and the development was going southwards. It continued going southwards. Now it will change, and I think the very fact that peace has come to this area will see a turn in the economy, which will benefit India's GDP, which is destined to rise dramatically. Vineet.
You're spot on, sir. Well, this is an outstanding speech by the Home Minister, Shri Amit Shah ji, filled with important facts, historical context, and the efforts of our government in the last decade. For decades, the retrograde Maoist ideology had an adverse impact on the development of several regions. Left-wing extremism has ruined the future of countless youngsters. In the last decade, our government has worked towards uprooting this menace and at the same time ensuring the fruits of development reach areas affected by Naxalism. We will keep focusing on furthering good governance and ensuring peace and prosperity for all, is what the Prime Minister just said about the speech that the Home Minister gave just a while back in the Lok Sabha. Dr. Kohli, coming to you. Well, obviously, this is a huge part of India that we are talking about. The Red Corridor, Chhattisgarh, and other surrounding areas have, long been enduring the menace of this sporadic terrorism. Now that it's become quieter, it's heading towards peace. What are some of the economic opportunities that you think will embrace this region?
Well, good evening, Beneath, to you, my fellow panelists, and the viewers. I think it is going to be the next daunting task to get them into the mainstream. I agree with General Katoch that without the political will, such an achievement cannot be in place. You had that double engine government and, help from the center, help from the state, a coordinated effort of center and state, leading to where we are today. I think the need of the hour now, as I said, next daunting task is to get these guys into the mainstream, because they were used to guns and forests and killings and so on and so forth. Now, that's probably some of them, especially the youth of the Maoists, that's the only thing they would have learned ever since they were born. They were brought up with guns, and they were not going to school, some of them, and they were living in forests, hiding, playing hide and seek with the police and security forces and so on. So I think the best strategy at this point of time, I may be stretching my imagination a bit too far right now, but I think a kind of a DBT, a direct benefit transfer, at least for 1 or 2 years, the way we do for farmers, Kisan Samman Nidhi, some kind of scheme for these guys have to be there, which should be linked to training, not just blind transfers and filling up their bank accounts, but it should be linked to training and skill development. That if they go and take your training, obviously normally for training one pays, but it could be the other way around, that some kind of direct benefit transfer to incentivize them to come to the mainstream. Because I'm sure if they've given up the guns, the next big question in front of them must be, what next? What do we do? Do we go back to farming? Do we go back to a factory and work there? Do we start something of our own, or should we get attached to some industry? So the first step will be probably considering a DBT kind of a scheme for at least 1 or 2 years, but only linked to training and skill development. If they do not participate, then a big no, because this is going to make them lazy, and they might start getting ideas in their mind once again. That's one. Second, I think promoting the industry, because industries in these areas were not going. Industrialists used to run away from the places affected by Naxalism. I remember speaking to an industrialist in Chhattisgarh, a few years ago, and it was perfect. The location was perfect with regard to his business. I can't go into specifics for obvious reasons. But then the person shied away. He said, no, sorry, this is not the place to me. You can probably get picked up and killed or whatever, or there could be ransom calls and so on and so forth. So I think now with the problem settled, it is time to encourage the industry to go and set up there, because taking these guys out to another place is a tougher call. Easier call is to let the industry go and integrate these places, set up the way a normal industry would go, and start recruiting people from that area, not to take people from another area. I think that is the second big step, I would say. So I think some kind of an investor summit dedicatedly for these regions would be a very good idea. not just like if I say Chhattisgarh entirely, no. I would say Chhattisgarh, so and so, so and so, so and so regions are dedicated, and government should incentivize the industries. Initially, you will have to incentivize both ends, the employer and the prospective employees. Otherwise, it will be hard to get them into mainstream. That's one. And then I think a very important aspect, which I'm sure my panelists would agree, social integration of these people into the mainstream society. Because they would be seen as untouchables, they would be seen as somebody who's got a criminal record behind them, and people will hesitate to mix up. So I think setting up of clubs, setting up of social gathering, community activities, where these guys can integrate, they can make friends, others can be friends with them. I think a very coordinated effort, to my mind, would be required if you want to convert this to an opportunity and you want to make these places as an economic engine, for that matter, make these places as a catalyst to growth of that particular state. I think that would be the need of the hour. So very coordinated effort combined with a bit of a social mix, a bit of an economic mix, a bit of a skill development, a bit of DBT. So I think a little bit of everything this is simply the way we have integrated the Northeast, which was sort of cut off. I don't say that Northeast had a typical Naxalite problem, but then the way they have been integrated, there's a dedicated ministry now which looks after Northeast. So I think dedicated departments in the government to make sure for the first few years that they get integrated will be the best solution, Vineet, as per me.
You're quite right, Dr. Kohli. Nirmal Kaur, of course, it's pretty laudable that such an impossible, daunting feat was achieved. But what do you think is needed at this point in time to keep this momentum going? It takes a lot of effort to cull such a movement, but something smaller can reignite some people or mislead some people. What is needed from the government to make sure that this situation only gets better?
Definitely. Before I answer your question, I would say that today is a day to congratulate, to celebrate, and for all the teams, it's a joint effort of many teams, not only security forces, the development people, the financial inclusion people, the health people, whole government, state and central governments, and very teams. And in particular, I would say the Honorable Home Minister Amit Shah, who made it, it was a subject very close to his heart. He went for Bastar Olympics year after year. He kept there in Hirbaz village, when everybody was scared to go within hundreds of miles of it. And he camped there. He built morale of the people, morale of the citizens, morale of the villagers, morale of the forest dwellers. And he brought things, and also, the Deputy CM of Chhattisgarh, Vijay Sharma, Shri Vijay Sharma. He also, I found his, enthusiasm and, very infectious, energetic, the kind of positive vibes he brought to and the team effort that was put in. That with the result that today we are seeing that it is the Naxalism, of course, because giving a deadline was also very effective. Because giving the deadline of 31st March 26, you have a deadline and you have to finish it by then. I think that was the most effective way. And of course, congratulations, gloating is in order. But having said that, to answer your question, yes. The cadres may have fragmented, it's disbanded, they may be scattered. And also we have to see that it never occurs again. This ideology, which has been, proven to be wrong, should never find place in the hearts of people. And this, this intellectual, so-called the intellectual backing or the ideological backing, which is fake, so-called urban Naxals, that spread these messages or provide finances or get them to get AK-47s and state-of-the-art weapons into the village. All that has to be nipped in the bud. All that has to be watched against. And these disbanded cadres, whatever, they have to be brought into the mainstream. They have to be given livelihoods. They have to be provided with, rehabilitated properly and integrated into the society. That is very, very vital at this moment. And equally vital is cutting off choking the system, the urban system, the legal system or the economic system that fed them. Choking it, FCRA brought in a lot of good things, when FCRA was passed and that for a Foreign Contribution Regulatory Act. But despite that, funding continued, trickled in from here and there. So that must be still there. That we have to watch against. Another thing to watch against is that they are sweetly lined so many landmines under the ground. Landmines, they planted landmines, and every time a police vehicle or somebody of importance will go, those two wires they used to connect, and the IID will have a blast, including the one in 2010, in which 76 CRPF personnel were killed. That was the largest casualty single day ever. So that those things, those maps have to be obtained, they have to be diffused, they have to be taken out of the roads from underneath, and sanitize the society, sanitize against weapons, against ideology, and also rehabilitate people, provide good governance. Basically, if you create vacuum, when you nature abhors vacuum. If you provide vacuum in the form of bad governance or absence of governance, bad things will rush in. So you have to provide good governance in those areas. Where Ajivika hai, there are so many government schemes. We may not even need very, very special schemes for those areas in the sense that they are very mineral rich. I'm sure the industrialists, and another very potential thing is they are beautiful places. They are hills and they are forests and wildlife. They can be good places for wildlife tourism. They can be good places for nature tourism. They can be, like Chhattisgarh. This is, they say, there's also that path, in which Lord Rama is supposed to have gone. That can be developed. There's the whole of Chhattisgarh called Bhagwan Ram, ki hamara to bhanja hai, our sister's son, because Mata ji was from Chhattisgarh, Sumitra and Kaushalya. So, those kind of things can be developed, tourism can be developed, livelihood promotion schemes have to be brought in, and we have to see that everyone lives with dignity. I mean, of course, economic progress plus dignity. The Naxalites had robbed the people, the citizens, of their dignity. They would go in the middle of the night and demand anything, demand to be fed, and also sometimes demand very ugly things like girls of the house and things like that. So we have to restore that dignity which every citizen is entitled to, a forest dweller in his simple ways is entitled to, and bring the light of development there, bring good governance, financial inclusion. There are so many schemes of the government these days, and I'm sure the mineral rich and the kind of environment, and also handicrafts. If you see the handicrafts of these areas, lovely, wooden handicrafts and other kinds of handicrafts. They need to be promoted. They need to be mainstreamed, brought into our emporia, sold in a big way nationally and internationally. There are lots of these promotion NGOs and all that promote handicrafts. There are lots of volunteers, organizations like Seva. There are millions of them. They could go ahead and help them, bring out all this and market it, and so that some kind of economic benefit and livelihood can be made with dignity for those people. And another thing is that Abujmad was a very, very unknown area. Narayanpur, as Bastar was originally one district that was divided into 8 districts. That also made things very easy, because 8 districts were easy to administer and all. So Narayanpur, where Narayanpur finishes, that part of the old Bastar, the hills of Abujmar start. And there was a talk in between some years ago that now we'll have a tank range there. The tank units, tank regiment will be stationed there. And when they came down to brass tacks, they found that till the Abujmar area, there has been no revenue survey. In the whole of the country, there is no place which has not been surveyed. We had the cadastral survey back in 1907, I think, or 19. Then you had so many, the revisional surveys, 1935 later. All these surveys were there. But the Abujmar area has never been surveyed. That is still being, those people still can't speak Hindi, English, or any other language. They still talk in their own language, highly inaccessible even till date. So that has to be mainstream, things like that. We have to bring in people, and also a couple of leaders are still like Ganesh, this Mishra guy, what is his name? Some Binsi Mishra. He's still in Jharkhand. Ganpat, this Ganesh guy is
All
thinking
right,
of
fair enough,
surrendering
ma'am.
to Telangana
We have
police.
run out
All
of
that has to
time,
be-
but I appreciate everybody who joined in and weighed in with their perspective. This is indeed a great day for India.